Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of the Isolated Literary Society presents Cowboy Feng Space Bar and Grille by Steven Brust. This is the final video for this book. We will be finishing the last chapter and the epilogue of the book tonight. If you're still here, Tila, hello. Thank you for joining us. I'm curious how you found the videos because I don't recognize your name at least. So unless you are somebody I know under a secret YouTube name. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry that you ended up showing up for the very last video. Totally up to you, but yeah, this is going to be the end of the book. So it'll be a big spoiler and also you won't have any idea what's going on. So I don't think it would be super enjoyable. Oh, are you related to Jerome? Jerome Como? That is another Como that I know. Anyway, could be not. Lots of Comos out there. Anyway, so yeah, I would recommend going back to the beginning of the videos if you are interested in this book in particular, or following the channel and tuning in for whatever I end up reading next, so you can get in from the beginning. I'm also talking about doing some short stories next, so that'll be easier for kind of hopping in for one video and so such like. Anyway, so how is everyone? Savvy, do not worry about it. You're totally fine. You have the best excuse for missing the end of a video because it is the latest for you that I know of anybody watching. So, and you caught up. So yeah, you're here. I'm glad that you were able to catch up and be with us for the end of the book. Let's see.
I'm glad Esty could catch up.
Yes, I'm glad everybody. I'm glad that all of our our main crew are here. for the end of the book. So I don't know where Pepper is actually. He's off surveying his domain, so he'll probably come by at some point before the end of the video to say goodbye to everybody. But anyway,
that's expressly why he will be there.
Yeah, that is the reason he will come by later. He definitely wants to, show his. Oh, here he is to say hello to his adoring audience. Pepper, you want to come up here and say hi? Oh, no? Are you just going to be contrary? Are you just looking for food I may have dropped on the floor because I was just eating my lunch?
Yes.
I just had a bowl of oatmeal and an egg and toast, which is breakfast food, and it was technically my lunch, and I ate it at dinner time because time has no meaning and there are no rules in quarantine. So it was very good. I made homemade oatmeal with a fresh peach that we got from some. I'm not going to give them a free name drop on the video, but a local grocery delivery company that did a giveaway instead of a CSA box situation. There you are, Pepper. All right, everybody, say hello. Of course, he's just hunkering down. Hey, what if I put it over here? Would you face this way then?
He's like,
now he's just like, what did you
rude.
do? I was just gonna cuddle with that mouse.
Why can you not let me have nice things?
Oh, poor baby. Poor baby. I just don't want you to face away from me and your adoring crowd.
Maybe he doesn't want to look at you while he's in the same room.
Oh, rude. All right. Well, there's your Pepper time.
It's a thing I've noticed in cats a lot. They want to be near you, but they don't want to look at you.
Yeah, Pepper's usually, he wants to kind of hang out right next to you, but it's just, he loves this mouse so much. Mm-hmm. Anyway. All right, guys, let's get into it. We will be starting tonight with the final intermezzo of the book. I know you, Ryder. Gonna miss me when I'm gone. I know you, Ryder. Traditional. Fun fact, that song is on the playlist because they already mentioned it earlier in the book. And it's one of the folk songs that Alan Lomax famously recorded. He went around the country recording people who just knew songs that they had learned and had been passed down. And he was the first, well, I don't want to say the first, but to my knowledge, at least one of the first people to go, hey, recording technology is portable now. we should start trying to record some of this like folk art stories and songs and things that otherwise might disappear. So this song was recorded by him, sung by, if I recall correctly, an 18-year-old girl who was in prison for murder. Anyway, so if it's unknown whether she wrote the song or just learned it from someone else, but anyway, definitely feels like especially poignant that he got that recording.
Thanks, you too.
Oh, Carolyn got treats.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Intermezzo. 3 plain, armless, imitation oak chairs adorned each side of a plain, armless, imitation oak table. An identical chair faced the rear of the windowless room. Lighting from an invisible source provided 2,000 watts of white light and distributed it evenly throughout the 600 square feet of the room. The walls were a pale yellow and 20 feet high. The ceiling was transparent at the moment and showed the almost starless night sky of Cicero in the Marco system. The floor was rough with real pebbles, imported from the Coriander Beach on the other side of Cicero, where a small but wild sea chipped away at rock that looked like painted shale, each layer an age, each age a color, to show that, yes, there was some beauty left in the galaxy, after all. A gentle, warm breeze circulated throughout the room, carrying with it the very faint scent of jasmine. A synthesizer attempted to reconstruct or recreate, or construct or create, as you will, a Bach improvisation in G major. It did a fair job of getting the probable sound of his instrument, but the improvisations were rather lame. The programming realized this eventually and resolved itself into Sonata No. 6. The door was soundless and efficient, and above it was the only decorative artifact in the room, a symbolic representation of a banana. The simplicity of the room should not be mistaken for an indication of austerity on the part of the representative cultures, nor on the part of the great banana itself. Rather, the 7 members of the crisis committee couldn't agree on any other decor. Oh, yes, all the chairs were occupied. Richard Emmanuel Feng of Beauregard around Cestus, who was seated in the middle left chair, had his feet on the table. He was barefooted, but he had washed his feet very carefully before arriving. He dared anyone to say anything. No one did. Across from him sat Nora Delacroix of Sorbonne around Eveleth, glaring and pouting simultaneously. Feng resisted the temptation to bait Delacroix, and resisted the temptation to try to hurry the meeting. He didn't have anything specific in mind to do, he just hated waiting. At last, Carla Weissmuller of Broderick around Broderick, in the head position, looked up from the V-tab and said, "We have isolated the time when they began serious operations to within a 6-month period." There was a snort of derision from the far right seat. Feng chose not to look. Byron Santiago of Brine around Neosol said, 6 months? Splendid. We have 1 functioning unit, and we need to guess within a 6-month... Could you have done better? Rasped old Delilah Corinth of Bangaloos around Yates. She was, Feng reflected, rather less obnoxious than most of the others. He wished she would bathe before attending session, but he was aware that she failed to do so for the same reason that he was barefooted. She twisted in her chair and sent a small feathered dart to make a tiny hole among several identical holes in the artificial oak next to the door. We have enough for a gamble. We have enough. Kiss my ruddy bum, suggested Corinth. Feng may be an asshole, but his teams get the job done. Feng smirked and inclined his head at the compliment, but no one noticed. She continued, "We have a chance now. You haven't given us diddly. You haven't given us diddly squat." Accurate. You must allow a certain freedom in translation here. In any case, Santiago sputtered and went out. Carla said, I'd as soon not sit here all day. We need someone to find a team leader to bring a team back through enough nexus points to get the job done without bollocksing it up too badly, and do it all without letting them turn our team into hamburger. Simply stated, the job will be to find out who the enemy is, why he is attacking, and get some idea on how to stop him. It is by definition impossible to stop him in the past, since he exists in the present. On the other hand, the past may tell us how to stop him in the future. If this sounds like a slim chance, it is. The chance of our fleet defeating their fleet in direct combat is also slim, but we will be attempting that too if it comes to it. The chance of one of our human or machine spies learning something useful is also slim, but we will be trying that too. We will attempt everything that has any reasonable chance, and perhaps one of them will work. The back time will be 631 years. The starting place will, of course, be Old Earth. Volunteer to find a team leader within 12 hours, or must I pick someone? Lois Brockingham of Charity around Biscayne, in the near right chair, said, Why doesn't Feng do it if he's so bloody smart? Normally, reflected Feng, this would have gotten her selected on the spot by the others, but everyone was inclined to give her a break, as her homeworld had been reduced a week ago. Her eyes showed no sign of tears, which was a credit to her cosmetician. Feng, who was a historian and research specialist, shrugged and said, If I thought I was qualified for field operations, if I thought I was as qualified for field operations as Frederica, I'd... Forget it, said the representative from Grandview around Zenith. I'm not concerned about the destruction of all human life on 30 planets, finished Feng nastily. She paused. As much as you are. Feng bit back a reply as he stared into the old yellow eyes. A point there, he thought suddenly. Carla picked up on it at the same time. Which of you, she said, cares more about humanity than his own petty squabbles? Or hers, said Brockingham. Betsy's tits and mittens, said Corinth. You stay here and argue semantics. I'll find someone. Like hell you will, said Feng. Eh? Said Corinth and Carla at the same time. You don't have a reduced chance, old lady. I'm going myself. She stared at him. Why? She said at last. He shrugged. To prove I have as much balls as you, maybe. Well, you'll need an overlay, I know. Corinth nodded. Fair enough, she said. Carla growled, but said nothing. Feng matched stares with her. She's probably planned this all along, the lizard. But then, if she did, it's probably for the best. Aloud, he said, I suppose you have the unrefined plans all set to appear before me, eh? And everyone else, agreed Carla, as VTAB holograms sprang up around the room. Splendid, said Feng with an ironic bite, blinked the machine to life, and kick-wished the plans to unfold. Just to be contrary, he opaqued the back and sides. After a moment, he said, I suspect it's going to take me at least a week to prepare for the overlay, so we don't have a week, announced Delacroix with a calmness that was effective, even if contrived. Their fleet will be to us in 120 to 130 hours. Corinth growled and threw another dart. There was little else to say. Eveleth was the last remaining bastion against them. If Eveleth fell, there would be only hours. It would only be hours before Broderick fell, then Marco, then... Feng licked his lips. Nothing like a close finish, he said into the silence. Very well. I'll schedule an overlay for the day after tomorrow. It'll probably improve him, muttered Brockingham. Carla continued. We have been out of touch with Old Earth for several hundred years, but we do retain definitive works of their culture from the period in which you will arrive. We have enough that the team, that you can be effectively prepared. You will speak like a native and think like a native in all the small things, such as idioms and elements of popular culture, which are the things most likely to give you away. Put another way, you will be a native in every way, including how you think. Be aware that this will subject you to those underlying psychological factors that led to those cultural elements. In other words, said Feng, I'll talk like a native, but if I'm not careful, I might act like one too. Got it. What else? We have, said Carla, military preparedness of a sort. We are ready in other ways. What we need is some means of attack. We have no idea what this might be, save that our indicators say there are 9 nexus points where such a thing may be found. And by the way, if you can help us reestablish contact with Old Earth, that would be a pleasant bonus. Got it, said Feng. Any idea what I should look for in a team? Corinth snorted. A doctor, for one. For research, said Carla. I would think... No, said Feng. She means to try and save the rest of the team after they discover we're there. I suspect she's right. You better find someone who knows the electronics of the era better than you do, said Carla. We can't send much with you beyond the locators, and that is an area in which our knowledge is quite scanty. And, added Corinth, find someone who can think well enough to tell the banana from the peel and find the bastards, since I don't think you'd recognize a clue if it bit you. And remember that revealing who you are to anyone from the past creates a paradox, negating anything you might accomplish. Feng nodded, ignoring the cut, and looked back at his VTAB, where clean red and amber lines blocked out his schedule of training in Earth culture and operation of the machine that would allow him, if he was lucky, to stay one step ahead of those who were determined to wipe out humanity, without creating one of those nasty paradoxes that would render the attempt impossible before it began. No problem. He winced. What is it? Said Santiago. I don't like having my personality overlaid. You'd understand if you ever developed a personality. Carla tried to hide a chuckle. Corinth laughed aloud. Santiago looked half puzzled and half irate. Feng sighed. I might as well get on with it. I'll be on my way. If I don't see you gentle souls again, it's either because I decided to stay back in the light ages, or because I blew it and you're all radioactive dust. Do the job. Do the job, echoed old lady Corinth, and one by one the others, except for Carla, who said, Good luck, Richard. Feng managed a smile. Take care. He left the conference chambers and signaled for transport. The pebbles hurt his bare feet, but he didn't let it show. All right. Does anybody need a minute? That was quite a lot of information. Unlike the other intermezzos, which showed, mainly turning points in the past of the characters, we've had 2 other intermezzos that were set in the future that sends, that sent the bar, and was, and with where Feng is from. So we've had 2 other intermezzos. I was about to, I'm looking at the time being like, I almost want to reread at least one of those. So the first one is it's a conversation between the 2 research assistants who are trying to figure out how to build Fengs.
Right, yeah.
And then the other one tells us a little bit, I'll just recap. The other intermezzo just established that in the time period that Feng is from, human colonies have been so hounded by the mysterious enemy and sent kind of running around the universe to avoid being destroyed, that they have lost contact with Old Earth. And all of their attempts to reach out to Old Earth have failed. And they had no way of knowing if this was because it was too far away, because I'm not even sure where they are in relation to it anymore, or if maybe communication technology has advanced so much that they're not receiving the signals that these colonies are sending out. It's a little bit like the Fermi paradox, the idea, an aspect of the Fermi paradox, which says, why have we not ever contacted any other intelligent life in the universe? One of the possible answers for which is our attempts to send out communication are just a completely different type of communication than the rest of the universe is using.
Hello, I saw your hand in the air, and
yes.
I thought it would be better if it were Penny.
Yes. Hello, Pepper. Everyone, get a little. Yes. You're so jaunty with your little kerchief, aren't you? It's yes, I require some attention. Thank you. So, anyway, if everyone's had a moment to sort of digest the information that we just cut in that intermezzo.
I kind of do want to go back and read the other intermezzos, but.
Well, actually, I think there's 4 total intermezzos from Feng's time, because there's the conversation between the 2 research assistants or whatever who are figuring out, or like watching a bunch of old movies and reading the old newspapers and trying to figure out how to make a building that will pass for late 1980s Earth. And then there's the one that sort of establishes the contact that they don't know about old Earth and its fate, and they've lost contact with it, and that's part of what they are hoping to find out by traveling into the past. And then there was one where someone, like one of those research assistants, presumably, then has a conversation with Feng, talking about, like, we've made it a bar, and he's like, oh, that sounds like a good plan, or whatever, you know. Have one of your fries.
I actually got, yes, you may, but I actually got an extra one for you.
Oh, thank you. What a good roommate.
But
sorry to eat.
They are difficult to resist. I know.
Yeah, I apologize for eating on the stream, but like there are French fries. One of my favorite French fry purveyors in Seattle.
Ballard Brothers.
Ballard Brothers.
We'll give them a plug.
If you happen to be in Seattle, they apparently. Well, I guess you probably ordered through one of the food delivery services, but you can do pickup or delivery.
Yeah, they're taking orders for pickup.
Yeah, they have some mighty fine fish and chips and burgers and such. Okay, chapter 17. Let's do the job. What will you do when it's time to die? Hey ho, my Johnny. Johnny is a roving blade, Tommy Makem. The sad thing is, when surrounded by death, each one loses some degree of value. Don't hate me because I say it. I'm the reporter, not the agent. Well, perhaps I am the agent too. But I deny responsibility, whatever. Death loses value. Life loses value. Each death is a bit easier to take than the last, and in this is sorrow. Death, where is thy fang? Or fang, if you wish. But Susie, this I had not expected, and were I not at least a little numb by this time, I might have broken. As it was, I waited for the tears, but they failed me. Someone, I think Rose, got me back into the kitchen while Jamie and Christian held off Justin's friends. Libby and Tom stayed with Rose and Tom and Libby stayed with Rose and me to watch the back door, which was still a large hole. The sounds of gunfire were harder to hear there, but they were present. I looked at Rudd and my mind reeled and spun, and it was all too clear and too dull and too much and too little and too late. I took the knife from under my arm and held the point beneath his chin. I said, "Physician, can you heal a cut throat?" He glared at me. "Go ahead. You'll never find what you..." "Shut your goddamn face." I brought my temper under control, barely, and walked a few steps away from him. "Susie told you who I was, didn't she?" "Yes." "Is she dead?" "Yes." "Did you kill her?" In a manner of speaking. He laughed without humor. "More fool she. I won't help, since no matter what you do, I will not tell you what you want to know. I have devoted my life to curing the human race of you diseased ones, and I will not fail now. It is just as well she died, and I thank you for that, at least." I closed my eyes. Visions of Susie lying on the floor, smoke and screams fighting for control of the airwaves, came and sat in the control booth of my mind. Would I ever be free of that memory, or would it always dominate and overwhelm the memories of our shared joys and rob me of the chance to conquer our shared pain? I didn't know. Perhaps she would have come back to me, and I would never know that either. But what I did know was that this filth would not mock my pain. I pointed my knife at his stomach, and I would have eviscerated him right there if there hadn't come a thump and a very peculiar sound from down the hall, which stopped me just long enough for another thought to grow. I said, "You'd like me to kill you, wouldn't you? Because you're afraid you'll break. Well, sweat, asshole." To Rose and Libby, I said, "Watch him. If he tries anything, shoot him in the kneecap." I went down the hall toward the noise. Tom was down at the end of the hall, and the noise had been work he was doing, trying to cover up the doorway so they couldn't come around and get us from that direction. I poked my head out before he had it covered. It was quiet, and the sun was setting once more. No one attacked me or even looked at me, except for a few barnyard animals. "Tom," I said. "Yeah?" hold off on that. What? I told him what I wanted him to do. He looked at me like I was nuts. Do it, I said. If you say so. He went outside. We went outside. He raised his pistol and shot the goat cleanly through the head. Sorry, I should have, I forgot about this line until I was saying it. I'm sorry, I meant to do like a, animal death warning. I know for a lot of people that's a particular, more upsetting than human death sometimes, so I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
As you will see, it will end up being a noble death. It was not for nothing.
I assume so, but still.
It fell over and flopped twice. I felt absurdly bad about having killed it.
Good.
Now what? Said Tom. Help me drag it inside. Why? We're going to break Rudd. Yeah, Aaron, I know I went like, I hope Kelsey's not listening, but I assume since she hasn't read the book before, she wouldn't just listen today. Together, we dragged it into the kitchen while occasional gunfire from the other room provided music to drag goats by. When we arrived in the kitchen, Rose said, "What is that?" "A dead goat," I told her. That's what I thought it was. "Libby, do you have your medical supplies with you?" She turned her head to the side. "I think it's too late to save the goat." "If we'd wanted him saved," I said, "we wouldn't have killed him." "Whatever you say," said Libby. "What do you want?" "A needle and syringe. Since the physician here is so worried about Hag's disease, I thought maybe we could inspire him by giving him a 25% case." He stared back. He stared. I stared back. "You don't know that almost a quarter of all goats carry the Hag's virus? In them, of course, it isn't fatal, but..." "No, you didn't know that. My. Where could you be from that you don't know that?" "Well, never mind. Tom, hold his arm still. Libby, draw some blood from the goat. 20 cc should do it." "You're lying," said the physician. I shrugged. "If you wish." Libby drew the blood and brought the needle over. Tom held the physician's arm tight while I held him in place with an arm around the throat. He began to struggle. Libby stopped. "What is it?" I said. "We can't hold him here forever." "Just a minute." She went back to her kit, found a cotton wad, and put some alcohol in it. She came back and rubbed this on his forearm. "Now," she said sweetly, "this may sting a little." "No!" "Tell me what I want to know." "All right, you bastard. It's Proxima, the fourth. Libby, give him the needle. He's lying." She took her time approaching him, and I got to watch his face. At first, he had been glaring at me. Now he was watching the needle as it got closer and closer, and we had to work harder and harder to keep him pinned. The point of the needle touched his arm. He screamed a scream like Poe must have imagined, which degenerated into unintelligible whimpering. I said, "Where is Sugar Bear's home base? Tell me quickly." "Oh, God. Tell me, you son of a bitch." "Charity," he croaked. "Charity around Biscayne." I blinked, not really believing he'd answer me. "Well, son of a bitch," I said. Libby said, "How do we know he's telling the truth?" "I'll explain later." "If you say so." I turned to the physician. "Okay, next question. How can we stop the missiles?" He shook his head. I repeated the question. He just sobbed. I repeated it once more, and he said, "You can't. I can't. They're only an hour or two away, and the transmitting equipment is on the other side of the planet." Can anyone else duplicate the transmitting equipment?" "Not without the codes." "Where are the codes?" "With the equipment." I closed my eyes and took 2 deep breaths. "All right. Libby, you're a paramedic. You know hospitals. Yeah? Go get Eve and meet us at Feng's. Be careful."
Yes, thank you.
"Take a cab. Do you have money?" "Yeah, I've got money, but Billy, being a paramedic doesn't have a lot to do with getting someone out of a hospital." "You'll find a way." She smiled a bit, then held up her automag. "I'll use finesse," she said. She left out the back. I said, "I still hear shooting. Rose, you and Tom go find out what's going on with Jamie and Christian. Don't get your head blown off. I have to think." They walked out of the room. I turned away. I heard the physician leap from the chair, and my knife was in my hand as I turned, and I stabbed him in the heart as he was reaching for my throat. I think I broke one of his ribs doing it. He grabbed me, his eyes wide and on level with mine, his breath in my face, his fingers gripping my arms painfully. "Thanks for doing the expected," I told him. I owed him that for Rich and Fred and Susie. I would have told him I'd made up all the stuff about the goat, but I didn't think of it. For his part, he didn't say anything. I let him fall, keeping a grip on the knife so it became free in my hand. He lay on the ground, curled up, holding his chest. As he rolled over onto his stomach, I stabbed him in the kidney. Then I stabbed him again and again. I remember my arm rising and falling, and I was detached, thinking this must be how Libby felt shooting Claude.
Stab him in the kidneys.
Is that from something?
Oh, I will add that song to your playlist.
Okay.
Or
That's a very whimsical reaction to a very upsetting moment in the book.
Sorry.
Eventually, I became aware of the fact that he was no longer breathing. I chose not to administer CPR. When I could see once more, Tom and Rose were back, staring at the body. I said, well, it's like back at Feng's. There's 6 of them, and we're sort of shooting into each other's general vicinity, and no one's hitting anyone. Why haven't they come back? Why haven't they come around the back yet? They're in that living room, completely inside the house, and we can't get back to the entryway without giving Jamie and Christian a good shot at them, so they're pretty well pinned down. 6 of them, I said. Let me think for a minute. Can we go around and get them from behind? I'm sure they're watching for it. We'd take some losses, but we could do it. Take some losses, shit. All right, we'll do something else. Rose, tell Christian and Jamie to be ready to back up carefully when they smell smoke. Then get your ass out of here and bring your fiddle. Tom, go around to the front, get as close as you can without letting them shoot at you, and spill kerosene all over the entryway and then light it. Then go outside and shoot anyone who tries to get out the front way. What are you going to do? I'll wait here for Christian and Jamie and Rose in case there's any trouble. Take this then, said Rose and handed me her derringer. I accepted it. I still doubted I could hit anything, but now I knew I could kill. Tom went out the back door. Rose headed toward the front. I waited, holding the pistol ready. The physician's body was face down, for which I was grateful. I think it was forever, give or take a few minutes, before Rose returned. Christian and Jamie came back into the kitchen about 30 seconds later. The cat came dashing out past our legs at about that time. Okay, I said, let's go. Rose picked up her fiddle and we headed out the back hallway. I began to smell smoke. Jamie said, what's to keep them from following us? We'll wait just outside and nail them as they come out. 6 of them? That's a wide doorway. If they come out 2 at a time shooting, they might get out. So they get out. Then they kill us. The air was cool and smelled of freedom, just as it had the last time I'd found myself fleeing from this house. I said, come up with a better idea, asshole. I got one, said Jamie. He had the sawed-off shotgun in his left hand, the .357 in his right. He said, catch you later, and ran back inside. I cursed softly. What the hell does he think he's doing? Keeping them from coming after us, said Christian. By himself. The hallway's narrow. He can hold them. Sure. For how long? Just until the house collapses. That can't be too much longer. Rose screamed Jamie's name, and before I could stop her, followed him into the house. By this time, we could see a red glow coming from the windows, and the yard was becoming warm. I heard what I think was a shotgun blast, followed closely by another. I started to follow Rose, but Christian hit me in the back of the head, and I went down. I tried to get up, and he knocked me down again. I might have tried to shoot him, but the derringer went spinning away. He said, what do you want, motherfucker? Rose and Jamie, or the mission Feng set out to accomplish? Fuck Feng, I said. Fuck the future. Fuck humanity. Fuck you. Uh-huh. Another pair of shotgun blasts, this time followed by others. I stayed there on my hands and knees while the house burned, and there was more shooting until the heat forced us to back away. I heard shots for a while longer, then sirens in the distance, and I will swear as long as I live that I heard the sound of a fiddle playing an Irish reel just before the roof collapsed, sending sparks high into the air and leaving only a very large glowing ember where the house had been. Oh, there we go. Yeah. I know, God damn it, Jamie, but that might have been the only way that they were going to get out of there. Mm-hmm. I just wish Rose hadn't gone in after him. Yeah. Okay. That's the part that always gets me.
Yeah.
I must have found Rose's derringer because I was holding it in my hand when we arrived at Feng's. Carrie let us in. What happened? She said. Neither Christian nor I could answer. Tom said, Why didn't you go to the ship? I thought I'd rather stay with you, she said. Tom nodded and sat down, his face empty of all emotion. Carrie said, May I? Tom looked at me. I shrugged, nodded, and looked away. Yes, said Tom. What happened? Repeated Carrie. Doesn't matter. The door opened and Libby came in, escorting Eve. Eve looked tired and drugged, and her eyes were very red, but there were some signs of recognition on her face when she saw us. Libby sat her down in the booth nearest the door. How long do we have? Said Libby. Maybe a few minutes, said Tom. Christian came and put his arms around Libby. I'm glad you made it, she said. I'm glad you did. What happened to... No, never mind. Christian nodded. There was no reason to talk about it. I walked over to the door and opened it. Tom said, What are you... Shut up, I said. I looked out into the street, which was pretty empty except for a pair of kids, 2 boys, maybe 12, who were walking in front of Feng's. I remembered them from the day we'd arrived at New Quebec, parking their bicycles outside a bakery that was now a mass of bullet holes. I glanced at it and saw that repair work had begun on the windows. Pitiful. I said, Hey, come here a minute. The kids looked at each other. Pardonnez? Said one. I gestured toward the inside. They looked suspicious, but for whatever reason, came inside. As they did, an air raid siren sounded from not far away. It sounded just like the ones back on Earth, and the one in Nibrium City, and the one in Jerrysport. They hadn't changed at all. I shut and locked the door. The 2 kids looked at each other and made for the door, but it could not be opened from the inside. They stared at us fearfully, but no one had any spare energy to try and reassure them. I walked over toward the bar to have a drink, but the missile hit just at that moment, knocking me over. It was about as hard as the place had ever been hit. The picture of Feng fell from its place and landed on the floor next to me. The glass that covered it shattered as the room shook and spun, and I went down, and somewhere I heard the whine of a generator and Carrie screaming. I saw Tom holding her. The room tilted, and a table or something hit me in the back of the head. I found I was staring at the Chinese cowboy with the big drooping mustache and the stupid grin. I hate your guts, you know, I told it just before everything went dark.
Take a breather.
Deep breath.
It's a lot of heavy.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a heavy book. Epilogue. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night, and joy be with you all. The parting glass, traditional. What can I say? 2 boys ripped from their homes, traumatized, but saved from the flames. They may never believe what happened. We'll almost certainly never understand, but at least they are alive. That was important to me. If you cannot understand this, I'm sorry. I stood amid the dust of the restaurant and looked around at those who were looking around at me and at each other. Libby in particular was watching me closely as she picked herself up. She had good reason. There was a thing called wonder in the air. My memory seemed sharp and clear, and there was no fuzziness of my senses after the first seconds of wakefulness. It might have been because we'd arrived at the unit's home base, which might be significant to whoever wanted to study time travel. Not me. I wanted nothing to do with it ever again. Jamie, my brother, Rose, my sister, dead now, forever gone, not even dust, not even... anyone hurt, I said. No one was. I stepped over to a window, looked out, and nodded. I walked back and noticed the broken picture. I ground it into the floor because I felt like it. I went into the bathroom, pulled the D-cleaner out of my wallet, and rubbed it on my face. The rest would wait, but I wanted my face back. When the pink was out, I took the skin stick off and let my cheeks, eyes, and forehead resume their natural shape. That was enough for now. When I came out of the bathroom, Libby was sitting at a table drinking from a bottle of Dom Perignon she'd saved from the earth. She said, Would you like a glass, Feng? Call me Billy, I said. And no, thanks. I don't feel like celebrating just yet. Tom, Carrie, and Christian stared at me. Libby said, I thought they were going to figure it out there when Jamie walked in while you were telling me to get the guns. I nodded. Me too. You did a good job handling those questions about time travel and stuff, although you slipped once. I did? When? They were asking about nexus points, and you looked at me. Oh, sorry. Don't worry about it, I said. One slip in that length of time is nothing. I'm sorry about Fred. She looked away. Yeah, me too. I studied the floor. Presently, she said, How'd you know Rudd would go for that bluff and that he was telling the truth? Well, it dawned on me that he was my counterpart. That is, he'd been sent from the future to stop me. Well, in my future, here, we've licked Hag's disease with carbon-based nanomachines that, well, skip it. If they were doing this because they were afraid of Hag's disease, they didn't know much about the disease, so I figured I could fake it. Besides, I'd bluffed him once before, and I knew because I'd recognized the name of the planet, and I knew because I recognized the name of the planet, and that made sense too. She nodded and returned to her champagne. Sissy water, Rich had called it. But Rich was gone, along with Fred and Rose and Jamie, who had probably gone the way he would have wanted to, both guns blazing in a last stand. What a crock. Eve looked beyond stunned. I think she was. Christian was beyond interest. Carrie was confused. Tom's mouth still hadn't closed, but I didn't feel like starting any explanations just then. Libby said, Was it hard keeping everyone in the dark about who you were? It came to me that she was keeping me talking so I wouldn't dwell on Rose and Jamie. That was like her. I said, No, I had to. Tom's mouth finally closed. Then he said, You mean all this time? I recruited Rich, Libby, Fred, and Eve before the war, then spent all the time in London reading newspapers to find the cause of the thing. After we got here, which was our first breather since London, I gave up and set Eve to the job. But what did you do? Directed the work, tried to keep us alive when Fred tracked down the saboteurs, and Eve and Rich tried to guess who was doing what and why. It wasn't until something Janie said that I realized our enemy was likely to be whoever was behind the wars. That was really the first clue. I wish Jamie could know. I stopped, shook my head, and looked away until I was under control. Wow, said Tom. I laughed. A few of them lived. Some may regret it now, some later, but they lived. All of the universe, it seemed, had conspired to beat me into the ground, and yet I lived. And with me were 5 friends, plus 2 living reminders of New Quebec. And I had what the committee needed. Tragedy is more real than the life that gives it birth, but I laugh in its face, because there are 2 children from New Quebec who will hate me forever. The door of Feng's opened, and I breathed the sharp, tangy air of Cicero once more. It was at this moment that I felt the sharpest, real sense of loss for New Quebec. Welcome back, Richard, said Carla. Thanks. Call me Billy. Did you... The enemy, I said, has one homeworld. It's Charity. Hit them there and it's all over. What? Brockingham's homeworld? But Charity's been reduced and... Oh, of course. Yep, a spy on the committee, move the homeworld to easy striking distance of their enemy, then convince everyone the world was reduced. Makes sense, doesn't it? But how can they move the entire population? Said Carla. You'll understand when I give you all the details. The short version is this. The enemy cannot have a stable and large society. If he ever does, he will stop being the enemy. He has a culture based on paranoia, and it requires that he destroy major sections of his own population if there's no one else to destroy. I don't understand. I don't either, fully. But you have to take my word for it. Their entire culture is built on violence caused by fear of infection. The fear that leads to senseless violence is based on ignorance, which in turn leads to more senseless violence. I am certain that they have spent the last few hundred years building up societies and then leveling them, with a chosen few escaping each time. Keep alert for missiles and to attack their homeworld, and we can either force them to some sort of reasonable terms or destroy them. To be completely frank, I don't give a damn which it is. Carla stared at me solemnly. It was very difficult, for you, wasn't it, Billy? There was a hard lump in my throat, but I managed to say, please, Carla. Charity around Biscayne. Yes, she said. We can have a fleet there in a matter of hours. We will decide what to do when the fleet is en route. And Brockingham? I will deal with Lois. Good. Are you going to introduce me to your friends? Perhaps later. Carla. Oh, perhaps later, Carla. Right now, these children have been taken from a world that is no more, and they need help. And I have bad news about Old Earth, by the way, but that can wait. Also, this is Eve. She needs help. Take them with you. Shut the door on your way out. Her eyes widened, but she complied. I cried. Libby came and put her arms around me, and we held each other. Tom and Carrie had their arms around each other. I badly wanted things to work out for them, but I certainly wouldn't make any bets one way or the other. Christian rubbed Libby's neck. OT3. After a moment, I whispered, I can't believe they're gone. I know, she said. Neither can I. Any of them. Look, I held up the derringer that Rose had almost used to shoot down Iverness the day Fred had died. Pearl-handled, dragon's head inlaid in ebony. I'm going to keep it, I said. I've always been the sentimental type. I know, said Libby. But you did the job anyway. Yeah, I said. I did the job. Tom cleared his throat. Well, what now? I don't know, I said. I still have my banjo. You and Christian want to put together a trio? What about me? Said Libby. You can be our manager. Christian shrugged and half smiled, but wouldn't commit himself to anything. Maybe he knew there would be a ghost guitarist and a ghost fiddler in any such trio, and maybe that bothered him. Whatever, things would go as they went. Shit happens. I still had my banjo, so how bad could things get? Say, Libby. Yeah. If I decide to keep the restaurant open, will you tend bar? She looked at Christian, who shrugged. She said, Sure. You're easy to work for a pinhead. Maybe I'll do that then. We'll see. Tom and Carrie still held each other, oblivious. I sat in my favorite booth and wished there was a band tuning up. Someday, there would be again. Susie. Ghosts from the past came to me the night the machine that looked like a bar and grill reappeared on Cicero around Marco while the others slept. I thought about returning to Cestus, but I was in no hurry. Cicero was fine and transportation was easy here and now. I badly needed perspective. I looked back on the events since my arrival upon the soil of mankind's birthplace, and the voice of Rich, my first recruit and the first to die, came to me, soft and ironic and biting and gentle. I laughed, I cried, I fell down. It changed my life. Yeah, Rich. All of that. It changed my life, but didn't end it. And maybe I'd learned some useful skills. Whatever becomes of me now, I'm richer, poorer, and carry a sorrow that I will never leave behind. Susie. We have the technology in my world to make you go away, or at least the sting of you. But I won't do that. I owe you this much, at least. In my own way, ghost that I love, I lay you to rest and bid you farewell. Maybe I'd write my memoirs. Maybe I'd just play banjo. I went back into the kitchen and, following my own recipe, made a batch of matzo ball soup. It was good. The end. How's everybody feeling? Everybody okay?
It's a heavy one to read during a time like this.
Yeah, honestly, when I thought about reading this book, I was just trying to think of something I wanted to read that I could get permission to read. And since Steven and I, not to brag or nothing, but we follow each other on Twitter, I thought he'd probably give me permission. He probably has the rights to the book. So I just went for it. Did not think about the fact that a communicable disease was a big part of the plot.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, yeah. Aaron said, I forgot how much Rose's death get me. Yeah. I didn't forget.
Oh, Aaron's read it before.
Yes. Yes, SD said that was a lot. Savvy said that was incredible. Both those things. It's a very good book, but also it's a lot to happen in the last chapter plus epilogue, to lose Jamie and Rose, and to find out that Billy was Feng all along. I'm very curious, how do people who had not read the book before, how do you guys feel about that reveal? I guess, Carolyn, I can ask you directly while other people type their answers in the chat. Did that completely blindside you, or
I'm just surprised that he was aware of it the whole time. I thought it was going to turn out that he had some sort of memory wipe done to make his cover more real.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe the overlay or whatever they were talking about, that maybe one of the effects was that you would forget your own, like, who you were or something.
Yeah.
Because I suspected for probably the last couple readings that he was Feng.
Oh, okay.
But
do you remember was there one thing that made you go, ooh, is Billy Feng? Do you remember what the first thing was that made you suspect? Because it's been so long and I've read this book so many times, I genuinely don't remember how I interacted with that information. I don't remember if I was completely surprised. I don't remember if I suspected it earlier. I feel like I must have at least started to suspect when he knows that the physician isn't lying.
Oh, yeah.
And the lady says, well, how do you know he's not lying? And he's like, I'll tell you later. I feel like that's the first point at which you have to start going, wait, hold on. You're just
the fact that
banjo playing schmuck from the earth.
He has a black mustache and Fang has a long black mustache.
Yeah.
But it was before that. It was just, I don't know, just little things. Like, it seemed like the kind of thing that this book would do. Like, the fact that it was holding over, like, there was kind of been this, who is the physician, who is Fang, sort of hanging over. And it just seemed like, I don't know, it was little things. Also, whenever he, like, seems to be looking back from the future, which could just be his future. But, I don't know. He just seems like he's...
Yeah. I mean, you do find out, I feel, fairly early in the book that Billy survives. He makes it to the future because some of his comments in his, narration of the book indicate that, he, like, when he says that, New Quebec would eventually be no more.
Yeah. And
everybody can have a little bit of kitty.
I honestly kind of thought the last intermezzo or whatever it was, where we got Billy's thoughts, I honestly thought it sounded like he was speaking from beyond the grave. Just the way he talked about it, it sounded like he was dead. But I think it was just the wording. It was just the wording that he used.
Yeah. Certainly could have been. I mean, I wouldn't put it past.
I don't know. It was a bunch of little things all together. It just
there wasn't one thing that made you go.
The further it went on, the more I was like, that seems really likely. But I did think that it would be. It didn't seem to me that he knew. Like,
it's
the way that it's written. It sounds like he genuinely doesn't know.
Yeah, it does. My take on it is that definitely, I mean, the overlay, whatever that process entails, has to affect his personality and his mind enough that he, in all small ways, will really pass as someone from old Earth. So he doesn't have complete control over his thoughts, which I think that's why he has to kind of delegate to, he has a team of 4 people and he kind of needs them to kind of do most of the work. And he's kind of just delegating and helping direct what to do, but he can't be super active.
Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah. It's interesting going back and rereading it every time. I've noticed little things that kind of tip what's going on. There are moments where he refers to the band in a way that only by virtue of how the sentence is structured, he's clearly leaving himself out of the equation. It's
Oh.
interesting. There's some very clever wording choices.
Yeah, see,
when
I
he's
didn't
talking
catch
about
that. I am
he
curious
says,
to know
like-
how he formed the band.
Yeah, there's moments where it's like they're talking like when they're talking with the team, when all, the band and the team are all together.
Yeah.
There's moments where he'll say something like, Fred looked at the band, then he looked at me, or something like that.
Oh.
You know, and there is that point. It is in the text, the point where someone asks about nexus points, and it says, Libby looked at him, then she looked at me, then she looked at Fred, and then she said something. It just seems kind of like clunky, but it's like they're establishing that she looks at him and then goes, oh, no, look at someone else. Fred, look at Fred.
Yeah.
Do not look at Billy when someone asks you a question about the future.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, everyone's saying, Esty says completely blindsided, but explains why there wasn't more character development. Yeah. She'd been saying to me that she was like, Billy just seems like not entirely a likable character, but also just sort of his main character development or character aspects of his character are he plays banjo and he fell in love with a very mean woman.
Yeah. He just kind of coasts along until the end. I think that was one of the
he starts getting a lot more active.
Yeah, like suddenly at the end
decisions.
he's leading the group.
Yeah.
And that's
I think it's subtle enough because he's been the narrator, he's been our viewpoint up to that point that I don't think when I first read it that the fact that he was suddenly taking charge seemed that noticeable. Which I think it's just a nice aspect of the way it was written, that you because you've been seeing everything from his perspective, it doesn't seem that weird.
Yeah.
At first. But anyway, yeah, the intermezzo where we establish that, or we are reminded that he in fact has gone into the past and he is amongst our team. This last one where they're going, well, who will lead the team? And he's like, I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is definitely the point which you go like, oh, so if you hadn't figured it out by that point, you have to know during that intermezzo, oh, Feng is among them.
Right. Yeah.
But you still, technically, you don't know. He could have been like hiding or something.
Right.
But that wouldn't have been a very interesting reveal at the end of the book if he'd just been hiding the whole time.
Could have been Libby for all.
Right. Yeah.
All we know.
I like it is subtle. I was thinking about this reading. It's subtle enough, and they talk about the overlay and changing his appearance and his behavior. That technically he could have been Libby, or well, no, I was gonna say he could have been Fred or Rich, but definitely we've established that he survives. So
right, yeah,
couldn't be Fred. Anyway, Aaron says he was behind the bar the whole time. Oh, yes. Esther points out that Billy also becomes more proactive when he figures out they're trying to kill him.
I think that
also makes sense.
That was a big clue.
Yeah. Also, they're trying to kill Billy, and that seems. Although they offer the suggestion that, well, maybe they're from the future and they know that Billy is the one who will defeat them, so that's why they're trying to get him or something like that.
It still seems weird in the context of Billy's other.
Yes.
Like he's not a super active character for a lot of the.
Yeah,
it makes him having sex with Libby very interesting.
Yeah, I think it makes it make a lot more sense. He's not just some random guy. He's not just one of the members of the band who's like hanging around and ended up getting caught up in this whole thing. They have more of a relationship than is seen on the page.
Yes.
They have a sort of a friendship on the page as well, but it's definitely like, okay, them sleeping together is a little less.
It makes sense that, she's maybe been attracted to him for longer than we think.
Yeah. Or they have more of a connection. There's more. He's not just some random schmo. Like, he is this guy from the future. That certainly makes him more interesting and intriguing.
Yeah.
Than otherwise we knew.
It does I do wonder what was his motivation, or if he even thought about, like, when he put the band together. Like, was that just kind of like a sort of spur of the moment thing, like bringing those two kids in?
Well, I think
because the other members of the band didn't necessarily have they weren't part of the team.
No. It's established that Jamie suggested that he's like, hey, you want to start a band? So something about like Jamie could be very persuasive. I remember one time he convinced me to start a band with him and Rose. And then when he's talking to someone else, he says like, oh, somebody was playing in the I can't remember the conversation now, but it's like one of the members of the band was playing in the bar and somebody else came. I think Billy was playing in the bar and the rest came to see him or something like that.
I mean, they did say that they met there, which
Yeah.
obviously made sense in that context, and it makes sense in retrospect too.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was definitely like I think he's supposed to have been a musician already. He establishes he's a historian, so it makes sense that
That's true.
he would be already perhaps well versed in traditional Earth folk.
Possibly, yeah.
They never really
Wonder how much of the overlay, like, really. Wonder how much personality it.
Right, yeah. Like how much of that is the overlay? I think a lot of it was, making him be able to think and behave like a 20th century
I assume so.
Earth man.
But it makes me wonder if like little things in there, like taste in music or something, would.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think he must have already had the banjo. I guess he could have bought the banjo, but I feel like he would have mentioned that if he had acquired the banjo recently.
Yeah.
He says, I still have my banjo. I guess it is somewhat ambiguous, but I definitely felt like it was more like he already played banjo. And maybe that's part of his cover. Because he had to have a reason why he was in the bar, because he was there from the beginning. Remember, the other members kind of came and played a show there and then ended up being in the bar when one of the bombs hit. And so they were like, well, I guess we're the house band now.
Uh-huh.
And but he had to have a reason why he was in the bar without being a member of the team.
Yeah.
So I think actually him being a musician who was playing in the bar, who had like a residency playing in the bar, that's a pretty good cover.
Yeah.
For why some random Earth man would just constantly be in this bar.
Yeah.
He'd have to stay in the bar quite a lot, directing, working with the rest of the team, and also making sure he was there when the bombs hit and stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Savvy said they ordered a copy of the book and are waiting to get a copy so they can read it themselves. That's cool. And Aaron said, I'm curious what if it has the same cover. And if you get the new edition of the book, it was republished. This is a trade paper. This is a mass market paperback. It was republished as a trade paperback, which is like the larger size of paperback book. And it amazingly does have the same painting. This logo is different. It doesn't have this like kind of diner looking logo. It's got a different logo that looks a little less, I don't know, 1990, I guess. But amazingly still has this painting, which is a great painting. It's well done. It's just like, I can't believe they republished this book and they did not change the cover art that doesn't
match.
It doesn't suit the book at all. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's wrapped around the back too. I don't know if you guys like really gotten a chance to see it, but like it's this whole image of this like super futuristic sci-fi world. Bananas. Anyway, yeah, as Aaron said, it's hard to keep a banjoist out of a bar. That's the truth.
Aaron, you and my dad would have fun.
Maybe someday. Oh yeah, that's right. You said your dad's a musician.
Yeah, and he plays banjo.
Well, maybe someday Aaron and your dad can jam. Someday they'll come visit.
Possibly.
I'll play the washboard.
There you go.
I just remembered I'm a washboard player.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. Unless anyone has any other interesting thoughts they'd like to share, because I would love to hear more thoughts about the book and everything if people have things to share. But I wanted to read while you guys are thinking of your thoughts and typing them. I do want to read at the very end of the book. There's a list of the songs quoted. Oh. That's just the songs that are the epigraphs. I finally remembered the word, or looked it up for a quote at the beginning of a book or at the beginning of a chapter. It's an epigraph. So it has a list of the songs quoted. And then it has a note on traditional songs, which I really enjoy. And I would like to read to you guys. The more astute among you may notice that many of the above songs are labeled traditional, which is supposed to mean they grew out of the ground, as it were, and appeared without the intervention of human beings in their creation. Others have the names of authors, which is supposed to mean that no one else has ever modified a melody, note, or a word, and that these songs must be performed precisely as transcribed, otherwise they aren't authentic. Nevertheless, I suspect many of the traditional songs have actually been written by someone, somewhere, sometime. In a number of these cases, the author is known by someone, somewhere. When I say a song is traditional, I mean that the author isn't listed in my handy-dandy deluxe edition of Folk Singer's Word Book by Fred and Irwin Silber, Oak Publications, 1973, or in my Makem and Clancy Songbook, or my Folk Songs of Ireland, Volumes 1 and 2, or any of the others I own or have looked through. This is not proof that no one knows the author. One of my books, for example, lists Peter's song as traditional, while another one points out that Tom Sands wrote it in 1976. And that's weird. I think he lists... Oh, no, Peter's song is just mentioned in that. I was like, wait, I thought he listed it as traditional. But no, it's
one of the ones that's just mentioned.
It's one of the ones that's mentioned that they play. I'll have to... Actually, I'd forgotten that one is not traditional. I'll have to look up and see if I can find the original recording of it to add to the playlist. I mean, I like the version of it that I added to the playlist, but it might be useful. Anyway, what I'm getting at is this. If anyone reading this should happen to know or to come across a source which gives authorship for any of the songs I've labeled traditional, I should be pleased to learn of it. Please let me know in care of Ace Books, and then the address of his publishing company. I would be most grateful. And then Steven Brust, PJF. His pre-Joycean Fellowship.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, I thought I like that comment about the idea of folk music, that if it's traditional, it just rose from the earth fully formed without the intervention of human hands, or if it has a title attached to it, well, then it's the complete opposite, or a name attached to it. It's a complete opposite, and no one else has ever modified a note and has performed exactly as the person. So it's like this dichotomy between a traditional song and then something where we know, and it's like, all songs were come up with by someone at some point.
Yeah.
Traditional just means it was written so long ago and has been played and rewritten and reimagined so many times that we do not know who wrote it anymore.
Yeah.
That's all that traditional means.
Like St. James Infirmary is almost unrecognizable.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've look up one of the early versions, St. James Infirmary is a very, very old song. But it has changed quite a lot till it got to kind of the version that we imagine now. I've heard many different versions, but I think the earliest ones are written by the point of view of a soldier,
something like that,
whose sweetheart has died or something like that. It's older and from the European folk tradition, and then kind of came to the U.S. and then ended up in like New Orleans and It took that seems to be a nexus point, if you like, of that folk song's journey, being picked up by jazz musicians in New Orleans. So that's I like that little note at the end. And over the course of doing the playlist, I found a couple of songs he has listed as traditional that now the author is known on Wikipedia. But he did not have the benefit of the internet in 1990. So, I never thought about it, weirdly, in all the times I've read this book. And often I have reread the note on traditional songs because I like it. It's never occurred to me to wonder if anybody ever ended up writing to him and letting him know. So, Savvy, you should totally come to the, whatever next... You're getting a new copy of the book, at any rate. I don't know if anybody else in the stream has a copy. I know that I know Michelle has a copy of the book, but I don't know if it's this edition or the newer edition. Yeah, Aaron says, I wonder if the note on traditional songs has been updated. And yes, I would be very curious if it has been. If he added like an addendum, like for this, republishing in 2000, blah, blah, it has been, these copies. Michelle has an ebook. Okay. Then it's probably the same text as the old one. Oh, maybe not. Michelle, look at your ebook right now. Tell us if the note on traditional songs has any addendum saying, update some of the songs we know. Can't remember which ones now. O'Donnell Aboo is known now. I think it's, I would say it honestly still counts as a traditional song because I think that was one where we now know who wrote the words and when, but he set the words to an older traditional melody.
That's definitely a thing.
Yeah. Also, there's a lot of songs that, you could still consider traditional, even though we know who wrote them, because they have become part of the folk tradition and in a particular country or in a particular community, that the song is played by many people, and it's, especially if it's in the public domain, so it's not restricted by copyright. Then people can play it and reimagine it as much as they like. Trying to remember some of the other ones that I noticed. Oh, Steelin. Someone claims to have written Steelin, but then I found at least one article that was like, there's older songs that are very similar. So he might have added some lines, but there's no evidence that there's evidence to discredit his claim that he wrote the whole song.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's I did use his recording in the playlist though, because it's a good one. Also, it's a very white playlist. So I thought, oh, look, a song that was at least popularized by a black band. Let's throw that in there. I mean, admittedly, it is mostly Irish music, so it's not entirely surprising. But black people did invent the banjo, so I'm gonna have all that banjo music in there.
I didn't know that.
Yes, it was based on an African traditional instrument and was kind of re-envisioned in the U.S. by slaves.
Interesting.
That might be oversimplifying the origin of the banjo, but that's
right,
more or less.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I strongly recommend, if you are a fan of the banjo and you don't listen to any black banjo players, learn about it. There's a group, Aaron, you might correct me on their name. I believe it's called the Banjo Reclamation Project. Yes, Aaron is coming through with that banjo history knowledge. The West African kora is the name of the instrument. It is a gourd-based harp.
Is it traditionally smaller, or?
I don't know. I've never actually seen one. I just know that is apparently it's not like, I don't believe it looks much like a banjo, right, but that is sort of from whence
I'm kind of wondering, like,
the banjo came.
If it's something between a mandolin and a banjo, like what we know.
I don't know. I know. Yeah, it was made out of a gourd, and it's from West Africa, as Aaron says. So yes, Aaron has said it is. I was correct. Banjo Reclamation Project, based in California. Definitely check them out. They have a lot of information about sort of letting people know, like, hey, I know you think that the banjo is an extremely white instrument, but it is not. Aaron said koras can be very big. So anyway, you can Google koras if you want to.
Look it up on the internet?
You can look it up on the internet and learn about it. Go to the Banjo Reclamation Project's website. I'm sure that they have a whole page about the origins of the banjo and influence from the kora.
Yes.
The quintessential colonized instrument, Aaron says. Yep, pretty much. Because I really do think a lot of people think of banjo as being like extremely white.
I definitely classed it in my mind a little bit more bluegrass, like Appalachian.
Yeah.
Similar to a hammered dulcimer, which is, to the best of my knowledge, is Celtic in origin and was brought.
I think so. That is my understanding of it.
Or at least was brought to the Appalachia region by the Scottish people who immigrated.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, but I've never delved into the history of the hammered dulcimer or the mountain dulcimer either, also, for that matter. Either dulcimer.
It's crazy, but like people across the world like to make music. Always have. It's so strange that like similar instruments and similar music would develop in.
Well, Aaron also points out there's a reason for our association of banjo with whiteness, and minstrel shows have a lot to do with that.
Oh.
They were like
minstrel shows always had banjos.
Well, I think it's there's a lot of an idea of like, oh, black people play banjos. Okay, I'll learn to play a banjo, and then I can do a minstrel show out of it. But then lots of white people learn to play the banjo for that reason. Anyway, I have not read up on the history. I know
Okay.
the basics, but I have not delved into it as deeply as Aaron has. And rightly so, since he is a banjo player. He should be educated on the subject.
Yes.
I should know as well, but it's slightly less imperative. I do own a banjo. Somebody gave me a banjo for free one time. Have I learned to play it, you ask? Why, no, I have not. It just sits in my room. I did, when they first gave it to me, I did sit there for a while when I was like, do, 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 and I'm like, ugh, this is so heavy and so big. It's just too much stretching of arms. I like the ukulele. Keep it all close.
Don't you have to use that metal pick thing too? Like you can't just
not necessarily. That's
really?
that is an option, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be metal. There thumb picks can be plastic.
Okay.
I guess, I don't know, finger picks I guess could be plastic too. I mostly seen them metal. As Aaron said, it depends on the style.
For some reason I thought that banjos always had like
if you're finger picking, most people will use the metal finger picks to do the diddle 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 do, the doodle doodle do.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. You could certainly just play it like you play a guitar or a ukulele, or any strummed string instrument can be played just by like doing this at the strings and then holding various strings down in various patterns with this hand.
Yeah.
Go like that with this hand and this with that hand. That's how you play instruments. This has been instrument knowledge with Sarah.
For some reason, I had in my mind that banjos always had harder, tougher strings.
I don't actually know why the metal finger picks are a thing, actually. I use banjo picks for playing washboard. So I have plenty of them. But anyway, Aaron says he doesn't know the whole story himself. It is complicated and messy, which is very true. That's history.
Yes.
It's complicated and messy. Very true, especially American history. So, well, I guess, I don't know, maybe not especially. All history is complicated and messy.
People tends to be complicated and messy.
Well, especially anything related to the African diaspora in the United States, I think, especially complicated and messy.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could probably wrap up now. I'm just rambling about banjos at this point. Rambling about banjos. I was going to say the Sarah Shea story, but that's not really. I don't talk about banjos that much. I don't even play a banjo.
You could just say rambling.
Just rambling. I'm a rambling man, as the man once said. Anyway.
Some man.
Hank Williams. Probably not first. I don't know if that was an original or folk or traditional.
That's more than I know.
I'm just a rambling banjo stan, as Aaron said. Anyway, I guess I'll just go ahead and wrap up since I am, in fact, rambling. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm so glad you guys stuck with me and enjoyed the book. It's a pretty great book. I like it. I will add the last couple of songs to the playlist. If you haven't had a chance to check out the playlist yet, go check it out later tonight after I've added the last couple of songs. There's I think there's going to be like 40 songs when it's done. It's a lot of music. Wow. A lot of music. Fun fact, I added Sister Golden Hair by America, which they reference in the last chapter that we read yesterday. And I listened to it. I'd never heard that song before. And the melody, the verse melody is almost identical to the Ted Leo song, Counting Down the Hours. That's a fun fact. I don't know if Ted Leo is an America fan or this is just one of those coincidences, those musical coincidences where a certain melody happens, or they both got the melody from like an older thing or whatever. I have no idea. You'll have to ask Ted Leo. On that note, good night. Oh, don't forget, tomorrow I'm playing a live stream concert on this channel, 5 p.m. Pacific. I will be playing at least one song that is referenced in this book. Maybe 2. Depends on how much practice time I can squeeze in tomorrow. I slept into like 2:30 today. Life is complicated. I ran out of time. I didn't have any music time today, but maybe tomorrow. Please come listen. It's going to be a fun time. And then I'm going to take a week off, and then I will make some other pages on this. So subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and you'll hear about whatever. And I'll post it on Facebook and Twitter. So follow those things as well if you want to know when stuff happens. Okay, that's all. Good night.
The Twitter.
The Twitter.